Day 810 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 485,000 military personnel losses, representing an additional 1,400 losses in the past day from 140 combat engagements. Then as for hardware losses, 11 tanks, a whopping 43 APVs and 28 artillery. Then we'll head to the map, starting out in Russia as a freight train derailed in the Volgograd region. Local authorities made a mention of an active sabotage causing this event, while Ukrainian channels claim the train was attacked by UAVs. Then head into Belgorod as Russian warplanes unleashed a pair of their Fab 500 aerial ordnance on the Russian oblast, as reported by Russian media outlets. The first failing munition struck about 10 hours before the second failing one, near to residential areas. Problematically, both of the munitions embedded themselves in the earth without detonating. And the reason for such ongoing incidents like these is either due to high failure rates or undertrained pilots. But also, in a number of reported cases, Russian pilots are dropping their loads early for fear of coming within close range of Ukrainian air defenses. Then headed into the north of Ukraine's Kharkiv Oblast as Ukrainian units continue inflicting fire damage on the invading forces and continue to do so far, right up to the northern outskirts of the settlement of Vovchansk, where combat clashes are still ongoing for the town a mere 5 kilometers from the border with Russia. And it was said that the construction of fortifications around the border town of Vovchansk have proved difficult due to the relentless shelling of Russian forces, according to the head of the Vovchansk City Military Administration. Although Ukrainian counterattack actions continue, with the direction being strengthened, with the AFU themselves continuing to make a point of it, like we see in this or these videos. Still, anything is possible, but if Russia advances are completely thwarted at these northern locations, it will likely lead to an attempt somewhere else along the north, in hopes of a bigger success. But having said that, Ukrainian head of intelligence Bordanov has just stated that although Russians had the intention to enter the Sumy region, which is the next Ukrainian oblast to the west, Russia abandoned these plans due to the difficulties in the Kharkiv region. So there's a chance Russia has made their bed with these positions and will look to pick away at it where they can, because the alternative would be to withdraw these positions, and since they've done so much of that in the past, they're pretty incapable of doing that now for fear of further embarrassment. Then headed a bit further southeast as a fierce aerial engagement over the Donetsk region occurred near to Avdiivka in the last day, where units of the armed forces of Ukraine successfully shot down a Russian Su-25 attack aircraft, as confirmed by the General Staff of Ukraine. And about a week prior to this, another Su-25 succumbed to its own early retirement as well, also in the same location. Then briefly headed a bit back up the map to Terny, which is in the northernmost part of the Donetsk Oblast, and a location that Russian forces constantly try to capture, that has so far continued to really only end up in a massive amount of hardware losses, with in this latest instance 3 or 4 tanks or infantry fighting vehicles collectively destroyed. Then taking a look around the map, as somewhere in the east we saw the Ukrainian Baba Yaga result on a Russian T-90M variant tank. Then also in the east we saw the destroyed Russian launcher for the BM-27 Urigan MLRS, so the multiple launch rocket system in the Donetsk region. Then to the Crimean Peninsula, as in a daring strike in the last day, Storm Shadow missiles reportedly targeted a secret Russian air defense base on Mount A. Petri, which wouldn't be the first time we've seen a negative outcome for the Russian forces at this Crimean mountains location. The mountains, once home to a Soviet-era radio technical center for long-range reconnaissance and guidance of air defense forces, now houses the 3rd Radio Regiment of the Russian Armed Forces, formed in 2014 following Crimea's annexation. The site, with its distinctive ball-shaped radar domes, would once attract tourists, and is now supported by a nearby military camp. The Russian Defense Ministry claimed all missiles were shot down, a typical response to such incidents. Although we don't have much more to go on at this time, apart from these Russian MOD claims that almost always seek to deny where they can first, then change their position when some crafty civilian snaps a quick photo, then sends it to the internet. Then headed across to some news for today. So in a display of some additional military might capabilities, a Ukrainian OTR-21 Toka tactical ballistic missile roared to life, captured in what appears to be newly filmed footage. Now, as for a backstory, these Soviet missiles were originally designed to deliver conventional or nuclear warheads over relatively short ranges. But of course, you won't find any nuclear payloads on these missiles due to the Budapest Memorandum, a deal brokered in 1994 where Russia, the United States, the UK, and Ukraine decided that Ukraine will give their nukes to Russia in exchange for security guarantees, whereby Russia made commitments to respect Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, which we all know how that played out now. And sadly, but importantly, that was just one of about 7 or 8 broken promises from Russia to Ukraine on the topic of Ukraine's security. But I digress. So the video, presumably recorded this spring, suggests that Ukraine may have secured a fresh supply of these weapons for use against Russia now. The OTR-21, a mobile, short-range ballistic missile system, is designed to strike high-value targets with precision and power. So the footage shared by a Ukrainian Telegram channel offers a rare glimpse into Ukraine's ongoing efforts to bolster its defense capabilities on a self-propelled missile front. Then to some more big news, and in a groundbreaking announcement, Danish Prime Minister Frederiksen declared that F-16 fighter jets from Denmark will be soaring through Ukrainian skies within a month. This strategic move will place these formidable aircraft at the disposal of the Ukrainian Air Force, bolstering their defensive and offensive capabilities. And although this has been a very slow and long process in the making, with likely only a small handful of jets provided to begin with, what instead happened quite fast was the international community's move to train Ukrainian pilots almost straight away, with Ukrainian pilots starting to get trained on these platforms even before official commitments to receive the jets were made. And so how will these jets help? Well, they'll significantly help Ukraine in the war by providing several strategic advantages, including air superiority by way of engaging and shooting down enemy planes, which can prevent Russian aircraft from attacking Ukrainian targets. Also for precision strikes, as F-16s can carry a wide variety of modern weapons. Not to mention NATO member countries collectively have very large stocks of said wide variety of weapons that they can provide to Ukraine. Also, the jets can be equipped with advanced radar sensors which can gather valuable information about enemy positions and movements. This intelligence can help Ukrainian forces plan their operations more effectively, plus electronic warfare pods can be installed to jam enemy radar and communication systems, disrupting their operations and giving Ukrainian forces a tactical advantage. Also, the jets serve as a deterrent, making Russian forces more cautious. Now, I should say may serve as a deterrent because, take for instance, Russian Aviation, it just may continue to act as per normal, making for some seriously attritional meat grinder problems for Russian Aviation. So, among other things, the jets will provide a serious morale boost for Ukraine, which has a more intangible benefit. But by the flip side, and by the very same token, it will contrastingly make for a very serious morale blow for the Russian military at large. But on top of that, my most welcome in the list will be the previously announced deployment of the AIM-120D AMRAAM, so the Advanced Medium Range Air-to-Air missiles, which, somewhat like the successful ground-launched Patriot PAC-2 missiles that led to a whole host of Russian aviation losses earlier this year, and possibly even more recently, for which the AIM-120D missiles give a similar range of about 160 kilometers. And with speeds of up to Mach 4, these missiles can reach their Russian aviation targets in as little as 60 seconds or even less depending on the range of the target. Not to mention they're highly effective at overcoming flares and other common countermeasures too. Take the flares for instance. These missiles make use of their active onboard scanning radar, making them more or less impervious to heat signatures. Scary stuff. Then in some more news, Spain is preparing a new package of military aid to Ukraine, The package will include large caliber artillery ammunition, like that of the 155mm shells, then also protected wheeled logistic vehicles, plus infantry fighting vehicles and anti-tank weapons, and the first 10 battle tanks of the batch of renewable Leopard 2A4s, with renewable in this context indicating that Spain has refurbished, upgraded or restored them to a condition where they are fully functional and ready for combat usage. Meanwhile, the Russian struggle for an expansive military budget seems to be not getting any better. But Russian soldiers seem to be provided with scooters, electric scooters, for a makeshift solution. Unfortunately, it seems to be 3 guys per 1 scooter, if this footage is anything to go by. Then to some Russian economy-related news, as technicians from a Russian airline, the S7 airline, seem to claim they can now repair key components of Boeing 737 and Airbus A320 aircraft, despite more than 2 years of sanctions imposed by the US and the EU following Russia's full-scale invasion. Those sanctions of which had deprived Russia's aviation industry of foreign support for safe aircraft operations, forcing them to seek alternative parts. However, the very same technicians of this airline also state that the attempts to source used engines abroad and substitute locally have been hampered by worldwide shortages and lack of access to those such crucial parts. The chairman of Russia's S7 airline stated in December that while basic work could be done, the most complex quote-unquote hot parts, maintenance and repair had not yet been mastered. And also note, reconditioned second-hand parts and non-genuine replacement parts are always just a recipe for disaster for any Western planes. Although if they manage to find a fix for some parts, Russia's aviation regulator would surely be forced to turn a blind eye to safety concerns, providing those safety certifications, in order to keep these now stolen Western jets running in Russian skies. Because in some related news, Russia will attempt to keep those very same aircraft active that were previously received on lease from the decadent West, as Russian officials like to call it, and keep them active in any way, shape or form that they can. As, from time to time, we still see international passengers carrying plane parts in their luggage to get them to sanction-hit Russian airlines. I can only comedically wonder what an X-ray scan of the baggage would look like. Then headed across to another Russian military mobilization blunder segment. So as part of a new tactic deployed by the Russian army, as they're now providing leaflets to soldiers to motivate them to not retreat, stating that it's better to be eliminated than surrender. Also that voluntarily surrendering leads to a 10-year imprisonment back in Russia. Oddly enough, the leaflet also makes the bold claim that the enemy advances without sparing its personnel, which is quite the opposite of some other Russian narratives that instead state that Ukraine is out of men without any to spare. Either way, it's fairly standard format for Russia to utilize nonsensical and simultaneously conflicting narratives depending on which Russian audience they're addressing at the time. Then headed across to a quick funny to round it all off for today, guys. So we're still very much in the age of the turtle tanks, where do-it-yourself in-field Russian non-engineer soldiers create some mammoth metallic monstrosities from scrap metal for a minuscule protection bump at the cost of countless trade-offs. Not the least of which is the now lack of full turret and cannon rotation availability or situational awareness, with us seeing our fair share of turtle tanks actually getting lost in the battlefield, only to run over a landmine or be taken out with some devastating ATGM fire. Also, being easily identified on the battlefield is one such other obvious trade-off as well. My mouth is agape. No 21st century professional army should look like this. Instead, your typical 21st century army will use the more fit-for-purpose ERA block solution designed to better counter a threat from say an RPG-7. And for every video comment expert that tells you that this is some amazing feat of innovation, well, every time they tell you that, I can show you another destroyed turtle tank, from where the trade-offs became a critically negligent part of their very design. So thanks for watching again, guys, as we continue to spread the message together that puts on display how autocracies and dictatorships alike will never cease their territorial expansionist ambitions ever, unless they are met with a strong, determined, and unified opposition. So thanks again for watching, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers!